introduce you to Phyllis. She is a Philco television that I purchased on Facebook Marketplace for about $50. And today I'm going to find a smart TV, hopefully, that fits the dimensions. The plan is to later hook up some speakers to run down through those holes so that they can sit under there, and then get a metal mesh to put inside, and then do some faux knobs, and then restore the rest of it because it needs some love. But all in all, great buy for 50 bucks. I've got one in Maine that doesn't have cabinet doors that can close for about 50 bucks, and it's still got all the guts in it that I would need to get rid of, and it was kind of freaking me out how I was gonna do that. So this is a wonderful alternative that I stumbled upon at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm gonna get started. Hey guys, I'm editing this video right now, and it's a year later. The TV is basically done. I was making this at a time when I was living in Natchez, Mississippi. I was living at Rosalie Mansion and Gardens, and my mother and my sister were gonna be coming down for Christmas to spend the holiday with me. And I wanted us to be able to watch all of our favorite old Christmas movies that we used to watch when we were kids on of 50s television, and I thought that would be really fun. And I happened to find one on Facebook Marketplace like before Thanksgiving, and I thought, can we get this done? I got most of it done. Aesthetically, like, it's complete. I just didn't put the knobs on, you know, the faux knobs that I would like to eventually make function the speaker panel below. Like, I would like to put speakers behind that panel and have the knob like almost like on a belt. I think I explained this in the video, but you know, so it can turn the volume up and down, and then all the other ones can just be like dead knobs because it's a Roku television and I can control it from my phone. So I don't really need it, but like the functioning factor would be kind of cool. I'm rambling. So anyway, I get this done for the holiday. We have a great time. But there are some things that I don't include in the video, like some things that I pivot from, and I included those clips in there, so it's gonna sound a little confusing, so I want you to go in there knowing that I pivot and I change, and that's mostly part of my creative process. Now, typically, I like to go into a project with a little bit more of a plan than I did for this one. I had a general idea of what I wanted the TV to look like, but that changes throughout this video, and I don't really explain a lot of that, so I'm very sorry. Shit happens, okay? There are things that I wanted it to look like that after I started working on certain aspects and like researching more and Pinteresting more and kind of seeing what other televisions look like, I changed my mind. I also got really interested in kind of like the speaker panels of like the old like Brunswick phonographs where they have like a wood lattice that's really decorative, and I was like, I like that idea. So again, you know, things changed. I'm really excited about the way that it came out. There is a lot more for me to finish on it. There are some finishing touches that I never got around to. My life kind of got crazy. After Christmas, like, I was doing a lot of other decorative work at other people's homes. I didn't really have a lot of time to do stuff at my place. And then I ended up moving, went up to Maine for the summer. I put it in storage in Tennessee. And then I came down here to Helena, Arkansas. So it's still in storage, but eventually she'll be coming to live with me and I will finish her. But for now, please enjoy the process thus far. All right, early morning adventures. I am headed to Walmart. Gonna see what I can find for TVs that are gonna fit. I have a television. I'm concerned it might not be the right size. This is 24-inch. They didn't have any of the televisions out of the box for me to be able to measure all of them. So I kept the receipt. It wasn't terribly expensive anyway. The boys are investigating. We're gonna open up and see if it fits. If not, I may have to figure out another option. So the width is just fine. However, it is, hello Ambrose. Oh, okay, just open that door.
This should be open because it's civil rights.
It is unfortunately a bit too short. But upon a quick Google search, these are just the dimensions that I have to work with. So I think what I'm going to do is build something out that complements this shape.
You are so beautiful.
And and see if I can make it work. What would you like, Ambrose? This sounds like a project for when I have a little bit more time. So until next time, I have this plywood, very thin plywood that was left over from a sewing machine restoration, and I feel like I can cut out an opening around this. Measure in for the bezels because I don't want to see the plastic TV bezel. And see if I can make a shape that complements that shape. That won't be so ridiculously offensive, and then paint it all the same color. Like a kind of cool minty green like it is right now. Maybe do some other designs. We'll see. Okay, I know I said this would be a project for another time, but I have clearly no patience. So I've drawn out the template of where the TV itself would sit. And I think I like the idea, let me get an actual eye look here, of having the top bezel a bit more seen. Well, I take that back. I'm gonna redraw out these lines. We're gonna take it from there. But I want something that will fit appropriately in the hole while also incorporating this bezel shape. So let's see if we can do that. I've got where the TV will sit. There are bolts in here that I need to get out. Oi. But I'm curious how I'm going to do that because I want this to come as close to the bezel as possible, and then I'll fill in the gap. But, oi. So, we shall see, we shall see. I've decided on a general shape. I've also decided I'm not going to spend the time to take out that brace that's on the inside because I can use, I've marked out where they fit. I can use that as a way to mount the inside bezel that I'm creating. I will also strap the edges of the TV here with what looks like pipe strapping, if you're familiar with that. So I'm going to build out a block here, drill through that so the TV bezel will mount on those bottom ones at least. So it'll support the weight of it. And then on those blocks, put the brackets. And then because it's going to sit so far back on here, where's that post? It'll sit right about there. I've got this much space to fill in. So I think what I'm gonna do is some spray foam. Once it's all mounted in there, cut the spray foam to then kind of morph into the bezel that I've created. Cover that with some sort of putty that I can then smooth out, and then give this a fresh coat of mint green paint, and then maybe do an interesting design. Maybe not, maybe that will be too much. Maybe just the bezel is interesting enough. But then I've got to make some knobs that I think I'm also gonna do in that mint green with gold. And maybe I'll do gold on the inside of these bezels. Yeah, I'm digging it. Alrighty, I have a rough cut bezel. I'm gonna sand all of that down, get it nice and smooth and even. But I'm gonna try mounting the TV on the back of this just to see if I can get an idea of what it's gonna look like in the cabinet.
Okay, editing me is interjecting again because I just noticed that that knife that I'm using to cut that spray foam is actually the knife that Austin Bilheim sliced his pinky open on. And I figured, what a great way to kill this knife. With some spray foam, so that it may never be used again for anything harmful. If you aren't following Our Restoration Nation on Instagram, and if you're not following me on Instagram, then you don't know about this, but a year ago, I ended up taking over the facade painting in the foam marble at Hope Farm because Austin sliced his finger open, carving pumpkins with me. It was a whole thing. But yeah, that's the knife. If you don't know, that's the knife. Also, if you're not familiar, I do carve a pumpkin most years, not every year. I try to do every year, but life gets in the way, of a famous person that I admired that has died in that year. And that particular year was Maggie Smith. And I'll insert over here the outcome of that. So he may have damaged his finger beyond repair, but at least the pumpkin came out nice.
Good morning from this absolute mess. I noticed that the expansion of the foam caused this to bow, so I cut out a section and I'll be able to put a brace that the TV will sit on that will keep that flat, and I'll be able to do that on the top and the bottom. I did shave a lot of this down. I added some filler where I needed to. Obviously it was difficult to get it to stay up above, so I'm adding in that final bit. I think I'm gonna shove a little bit up there, and then I should be able to, and I know these are probably wildly incompatible materials, but this is just in lieu of creating a whole new plastic bezel. I am going to drywall mud over that. Anyway, and then paint it all the same color. I'm gonna try to get as close to this color as I possibly can, like a sagey, minty green. And then I can put the TV in and then start working on refinishing all of the woodwork. So in order to fix this bowing, like before I mentioned I cut out that notch, I'm going to use this scrap piece of wood and lay it down below where the TV itself will rest and bracket it in to both sides. And then I'll do the same thing up above once I have let this new bit of foam dry enough to then cut. And then I can start cleaning this up and patching all of that, sanding it down, making it nice and smooth to fit in with this bezel edge. So I've got the bottom side nice and flush. What I'm having trouble with now is the top side, which expanded just as I expected. So I'm going to have to obviously trim all of this out and then cut a gap so that I can affix a bracket across the top and make sure that that sits in the way that I would like. I am going to have to lower this side down. Over here is the correct height because I don't want to see the bezel. We got to lower this side down. I screwed it in a little too high, so that will be fixed. So as it turns out, I did actually have this bracket level. However, the TV wasn't level because of this strange protrusion. No such protrusion on this side, just on this side. So lowered that down so it is nice and level from the front. Oh God, I need a haircut. I'm not quite sure that this is dry enough for me to cut, so I am going to be patient. I am practicing patience. This section wasn't dry enough inside the foam for me to hack that off, so I have started puttying around the bottom. Got my bezel nice and straight along the bottom. Just waiting to cut this along the top, and then I can straighten the top. And it's getting close to being able to mount the TV inside. I'm pretty stoked. What are you doing? I'm going to sand, please focus, there we go. I'm going to sand that down the same way I did below here. So there's a nice groove. I'm gonna have that sanded down below this green bezel. So there's a nice groove for me to put in the putty. And then once all of the putty is dry, then I will start sanding that and find out where there are missing sections, putty again, sand again, and hopefully paint. But if not, I will end up repeating the process, puttying and sanding. It has been mudded, and now I'm just going to patiently wait for that to dry enough that I can sand it and then repeat the process. Okay, good morning. This is, I believe, day 3, day 4. What day is today? Today's Monday. I picked this up Friday morning. Probably started working on Saturday. All right, yeah, day 3. Not bad. The bezel is looking good. There are still some spots that need to dry. I did start sanding some of the spots that are dry. Up in here, this is actually just the spray foam. So I think I'm gonna try to carve that out with a knife and then putty in there, because the spray foam won't accept paint the same way that this putty will, and I need it all to be cohesive. This is still slightly wet where I had carved out that channel to squish this back in, so that's gonna take probably another full day to dry. That's a lot of putty to try to dry in there. And then up in here is still a little bit wet. So I think what I'm actually gonna do is get some putty tape so that everything can be nice and smooth. The mesh tape, the like the screen, so that I can get some putty to like sit in the grooves. That will make sure that I don't get any cracking. And the only place I'm concerned about cracking is down in here, where there is an awful lot of gap to fill. Because like I said, I had to cut out a channel in the spray foam. But this, if it will focus, is starting to get very smooth. One more pass of some putty in here. Please focus, come on. Are you not gonna focus? There we go. One more pass of the putty in here and another sanding and I should be good. But gotta start to get this profile down. We're getting there. What do you think, Ambrose? Hi. Meanwhile, back at Hope Farm. I never know how to stop, so I decided I would try the wet technique, and I just brushed this on. This is so far the best application I've found for this. The only thing I'm nervous about is sanding around the original bezel. I need to make the transition as smooth as possible. So I'm going to be very, very careful as I try to clean that edge up. And then once that edge is nice and done, I guess. I don't know. I am gonna sand the inside. So I might do a few more touch-ups on this section with the brush, but it's okay so far. All right, so I have painted the inside bezel after 3 passes of mudding and sanding, and I'm still not super pleased with it. However, it is gonna be behind plexiglass, and maybe I will be okay with it, but who knows. I do have a backup plan. The backup plan is to use a peel and stick wood vinyl sticker and just do the inside bezel with that and leave the original plastic bezel as it is, and kind of make an interesting design with the wood grain kind of like going in this way and kind of piece it together like you would veneer. That is plan B. Plan A, obviously, is this right here. So it all kind of looks like one continuous bezel, but don't always get what you want. I've got to make some knobs. Ideally, I would love the knobs to actually serve some sort of function. So I'm almost wondering if I can make a belt system, have this one be the volume knob. You know, it would have been the channel selection, but have this one be the volume knob and attach a belt to it, almost like a sewing machine belt, to the knob on the speaker that's going to be down here. Have that all affixed in place so that when I turn this, it effectively turns the knob on the speaker. But this may be a future thing. I may just do some dummy knobs in the meantime because, again, I have a million other projects. I am going to be doing an interesting design with the speaker screen. I picked up the fabric and then some complementary, basically soutache, even though it's not braided, but it's going to be stitched down like soutache. And I'm going to do a lattice pattern. So we're getting there. So it is time to start making the speaker panel. And I'm going to be cutting out a shape from inside this section of wood. Obviously that's where the edge is. I'm going to cut that off. I'm gonna come up with a design of sorts to kind of add a little dimension to the corners instead of just a square. Wish me luck. Dry fit is doing okay. I just need to figure out a pattern that kind of complements this. Let's see what I can figure out. I mean, realistically, it would have just all been screened on the inside there, but that just seems so boring. Oh, I think I have an idea. Okay, new plan. Do full screen, just cut out something in there for, just cut out a frame so that I can lay the cloth over it, staple it around the edges, but then add corner embellishments. I think that would be nice. We shall see. Alrighty, I just steamed my fabric because I have an iron, but I do not have an ironing board right now, and I really need a new iron, and I was not gonna get one for this project because I just really want to be done with it already, and a shower steam works just fine to get the folded wrinkles out of this fabric. So what I plan to do with this kind of taupey tan fabric is to lay this tape in a lattice pattern with gold embroidery floss on either side. And that should start to resemble an antique TV speaker screen. Let's go. All right, I've just threaded up my machine with some gold. Traditionally, these speaker screens had like bits of gold in them, kind of like interwoven throughout. So I'm going to stitch the tape down with some gold and hopefully get the same effect.
All right, as you can plainly see, I didn't end up using that material on the speaker screen at all. This is where I pivoted. I didn't like the way it looked, and I think even the embroidery thread that I was using, that should never have been threaded through that machine, ended up like snapping, and I didn't like it. So we pivoted, and I didn't document that process, because I don't think I ever thought I was gonna make this video, but here I am, a year later.
I feel like the green is too bright. I need more of an olive. So I'm gonna repaint that. But I also realize I need to sand that section up there because it dips in, whereas the bottom is flat. And then I shall repaint again. That's the original color that I had it painted. Way too bright, way too vibrant. We're going for like a dusty, dead green gray, which is much closer to the original. All right, this color is much more appealing. I just did the inside with some black tape and I'm still, this is gonna drive me crazy. At least my legs look good. This morning, I am creating a template. I'm gonna tape together a bunch of these papers to go around the inside because I am determined to have a beautiful, perfectly flat inner bezel done in faux wood that will then look lovely with these gold decals going along the inside. Finally pleased with the paint color that I mixed up for here. It's coming together. And then all the wood needs to be redone because it's in rough shape. Getting a pattern for this has been so difficult because it is not only curved on the inside and coming out at an angle, like flaring out at an angle, but there's also a bit of a curve around on these. So this has been it's almost been an hour and I'm almost done. What are you doing? He doesn't know. He's inspecting. Just waiting now on the delivery of the peel and stick faux wood that matches enough to this wood grain. And then we'll get to cutting. Well, after this pattern is done.
So right here, I'm actually adding some gold leaf or gold leaf inspired decals that I had as an extra set from a sewing machine that I restored. This is probably from like the 1920s, and it just came as like a practice set of decals, but I've worked with water slide decals for years. I'm kind of a pro at it, especially being able to get them to like mold to a curved surface, which you'll see me do around the outer green bezel when I use what I didn't even realize would fit. I just kind of had it in my stack. Right here, this is the bed decal of a 14-inch 1920 Singer sewing machine, and it fit perfectly, and it has like little like Art Deco zappy electric motifs in it, and I loved it, and it fit perfectly, so I was thrilled. It just kind of fell into place, so quite pleased. Right here, I'm just looking for any ridges that you don't see with the naked eye so that I can then take like a damp paintbrush and work some water under the decal to then slide it around and really get it into the proper position. This can be incredibly frustrating. I think I worked on this section for like an hour. And then even here, when I pull the camera up, you can still see like 2 or 3 ridges that I eventually work out after the fact.
So I took a break from the TV for Thanksgiving and I just got this couch in the mail so that I can actually sit in this room instead of in that very uncomfortable chair and watch said television. But updates on the television that will be happening today. I got the plexiglass that will be going over the front, and I also got some sort of screen for the front of the speaker. I don't know if I want to go with the caned screen now that I kind of want to go with like an Edison style Victrola screen for their speakers. So I might be making one of those out of wood, who knows? But more to come on the TV after this is assembled, which will match these drapes that I'm actually going to be turning into Roman shades. They're just hung up there right now because I needed something and they match perfectly. Couch is assembled. So a coat of shellac has just been applied. So that is all nice and shiny. And I just have to wait for that to dry enough for me to place in the plexiglass. I am going to be using hot glue and getting it down in that crevice and then using some of these rods and hot gluing them into the corner that will lay over the edge of the glass just to hold them in place. So, fingers crossed that goes well.
I did like so many of them. I like these that have the big distinction in color from light to dark with because you do see that in marble, but it's just, I love that. But there's another good one over here. It does the same thing. I like that too.
So that one, and that one, and all of those.
Today, I'm gonna finish the speaker of the TV. I've got the speaker that I stretched the fabric over. I'm going to lay this caning over that, and then I'm going to cut out an intricate kind of gramophone-esque speaker screen out of this after I've laid that kind of peel and stick wood over the top of it. So it'll be a nice cutout kind of wood screen, very similar to what you would see for a grill on like a Brunswick gramophone or phonograph. So gonna get started on that. Alrighty, so I've got this stapled down and I'm gonna trim the excess and then I'm gonna start making the design for the front. I have my design drawn out on half of it. I'm gonna cut this out, trace it on some paper, and then recreate it on this side, mirror image, so that I have a full design. It's kind of reminiscent of some acanthus leaf, but also, if you'll notice, it's got 2 M's. Really, the M will be here, and then there'll be a round M here. This arch is just for funsies. I've cut out this side, made a trace, and then I've just kind of punched in where everything is going to be. And now I can get to cutting this out. And once that's done, getting the faux wood on there. I have covered the screen in the false wood. And now I'm going to painstakingly cut around the backside here while also being able to kind of fold some over so that there's still some wood grain on the inside so it doesn't look like it's cut from foam. So wish me luck. This is complete. It is not as clean as I would like it to be, but it's about as clean as I could get it with the tools that I have. Eventually I will be using this to trace to do a real piece of wood, but for now, this is gonna have to do. I think I'm going to shellac it, so it is nice and shiny, just like the rest of the woodwork on the TV, and then install that tomorrow. All right, guys, that is the end of the video, and I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. I still have some work to do. Obviously, I have to make knobs, and I've got to finish the woodwork, and I would like to eventually make the speaker screen out of actual wood. I was just working with what I had at the time to get it done by Christmas, but I love how it turned out for Christmas. We had a wonderful time, and thanks so much for following along. And if you like what I did here today and you'd like to see more frequent content, you can subscribe to my Patreon, and I'll include that link down below. Everything I earn on Patreon goes to the restoration of the Tappan Pillow House in Helena, Arkansas, a property that I just bought this last year that I'm working very hard to restore. So I would love it if you follow along.